Rejected, thrown away, affected. I don't know what to say. Ejected, cast out to the sea, disconnected. They didn't want me.
Hello everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of Nicksmissal III. I am Patricia and I'm here with Admin James.
Here!
So today we're going to be discussing about one that finally has an upbeat, happy note, which we'll discuss about in the end. It is the Hey Arnold movie, simply called The Jungle Movie. So the Jungle Movie has a very interesting history. So Craig Bartlett wanted to conclude the series of Hey Arnold, ending on the conclusion of The Journal, which is a 2-part episode that would have led up to Arnold searching for his missing parents in San Lorenzo. They were planning on releasing it, but unfortunately Nickelodeon saw the huge amount of money that they were gaining from both of the Rugrats movies, both making over $100 million each. And so they decided that they wanted to do more movies based on their Nicktoons. Hey Arnold was planning on doing a TV movie called Arnold Saves the Neighborhood. And that was almost pretty much finished into production. But Nickelodeon decided they wanted to release a movie right now. And they wanted Hey Arnold to continue because it was gaining a lot of popularity. So Hey Arnold ended up getting 2 more seasons, and the TV movie ended up being the theatrical movie in the form of Hey Arnold the Movie. And unfortunately, Hey Arnold the Movie did not gain the critical acclaim or the money that Rugrats in Paris got. So even though that Craig Bartlett continued the final 2 seasons of Hey Arnold, he wanted to do the Jungle Movie, but Nickelodeon said no. And eventually Nickelodeon and Craig Bartlett had their disagreements, and Craig Bartlett left. He eventually went over to Cartoon Network to pitch a pilot called The Party Wagon. That sadly never got picked up, and then Craig Bartlett kind of went into kind of like a little hiatus for a couple of years, working on a couple of preschool shows, until eventually he created Dinosaur Train and Ready, Jet, Go, which kind of boosted up his popularity for a new generation. And then eventually, Craig Bartlett was called in to do the TV movie many, many years later, like over a decade later. So yeah, we're going to be discussing about what the original idea for Hey Arnold the TV movie would have been. So, I mean, at the time of this recording, the Hey Arnold TV movie has not been released, so we don't know how different or how similar it would have been to the theatrical movie. But there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff about this. There was like a 15 to 20 second clip that was leaked online a couple of years ago of Arnold's parents chasing La Sombra, who stole the corazón. Okay, so it would focus on Arnold, trying to raise the money so he can be able to find his missing parents. And so he ended up winning a contest from the school. And the school was able to grant Arnold a trip to anywhere he wanted. So he and his entire classmates, they went over to San Lorenzo so he can find Arnold's missing parents. And along the way, they meet up with a whole bunch of colorful characters, and the kids start wandering around the jungles, and, Arnold is focusing on trying to find his missing parents. And, we try to find out more information about the green-eyed people, which were the hidden tribe that lived in San Lorenzo that Arnold's parents were taking care of from the sleeping sickness. And we learned a lot more of La Corazón, which was the sacred jewel that the green-eyed people owned that La Sombra stole. We would have found out more information about La Sombra, which was going to be the main villain of the story. So, yeah, there's a lot of things about this. And, I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was 15 years old, knowing about that the Jungle Movie was canceled, I was so angry. That was, like, one of the first things that I remember being so disappointed finding out online about, the movie being canceled, that I was just borderline devastated. I was one of those people who, on Nick.com, messaged almost every single day to have this movie released. I'm not even joking. I was that big of a dork.
Really?
Yeah.
I remember this being a dark, very, very dark period for animation.
Yeah, I mean, the movie would have came out around 2002, so Pixar and DreamWorks were at the height of their popularity. Disney was pretty much at one of their lowest points. I mean, like, you had, Atlantis the Lost Empire, and I think, Treasure Planet or something came out, and those movies became, like, box office failures. And then, let's see what else. This was before Lilo and Stitch came out, I remember. So yeah, I mean, this was kind of like, not one of the lowest points of animation, but just one of them, I think. And it's funny because, I remember, when Craig Bartlett was stating in numerous interviews that he wants to see the Jungle movie come out, and Nickelodeon just wouldn't let him. They wouldn't let him do the movie, and that got so many people upset, and they wrote letters to Nickelodeon saying, please release the Jungle movie. I mean, every single interview that Craig Bartlett would do online, everybody was hanging on to their word to see if maybe there was a slight message of the Jungle movie. Because, remember, this was the thing that everybody wanted to know about. What happened to Arnold's parents? Were they dead? Were they alive? And they were also going to reveal two other things. Arnold's last name and Helga proposing her love to Arnold.
How you doing that, sharp man?
Yeah. I remember when that news was announced, when Craig Bartlett revealed that hint on Arnold's last name, Grandpa Phil actually revealed it many times, and then people put two and two together, and yes, his last name is Shortman. I was so disappointed when I first heard that news. But yeah, and then of course about Helga's love, I mean, that would have continued on with the Patakis, which was another canceled project that Craig Bartlett wanted to do that involved with Helga and her family, with Helga being a teenager and her living a very depressed life, which we actually discussed about in our first Nicksmissal, which you can go check it out right over here or on the description box below. What would have happened if this movie would have came out, James?
Maybe it would have probably done better in theatres and be more positively received. The first one was supposed to be a TV movie, and then they released it for theatres. This one was supposed to be released for theatres, and now they're releasing it on TV.
Yeah, that's very ironic, and I kind of find it to be a little sad, but yet ironic, but you know what can you do?
At least we're getting it.
Yeah, I was one of those kids who wanted to see this movie come out, and as for how it would have been, I think it would have been great. I think it would have been a great closure to the series. That kids would have gone so crazy over this movie, because it was a movie that was built up from the very... Well, not toward the beginning, but like toward the episode Parents' Day, in which we find out more information about Arnold's parents. And then the journal was the one that pretty much cemented more information about, how his parents lived in San Lorenzo and the Green-Eyed People. And then we found out more information about La Sombra and La Corazon. And, it was building up these little things about... all these questions that would have been answered, like, when Arnold was born in the temple, and then the volcano stopped erupting when he was born. Why did that happen? Or, what was the significance of La Corazon? Why did La Sombra wanted to chase after it? And, who are the Green-Eyed People? Why is there, some sort of, mysticism behind them? How did they know where Miles and Stella were every time they got into trouble? It's these are questions that I wanted to know about. The whole thing about Arnold's last name and Helga proposing to Arnold, saying that, she loves him, that's cool and all, but I wanted to know about those things. And I think a lot of people wanted to know about those things as well. It's it just built up so much mystery, and not to mention that the art behind the Jungle movie just showcased about all these interesting things that they would have presented, Arnold being confronted by one of La Sombra's men, being interrogated about, where something was, and Arnold had no idea. Or the fact that Sid, Stinky, and Harold were traveling in the jungle, and they got completely lost, and Harold was trying to be the boss as usual. And, Phoebe looking around and seeing the pretty... fauna of the jungle, and just talking about how great it is, and all these things. Most of the characters would have gotten a lot of development in the movie, but, the most important thing was about whether Arnold was going to find his parents. And, of course, more information about the Green-Eyed People, La Sombra, and La Corazon. So, yes, I was one of those people in which I wanted to see the movie. In fact, I have a story. Okay, so back in 2003, when the movie was confirmed to be canceled, I was 17 years old, and I had seen the show since I was 10. I wrote to Craig Bartlett's office in Nickelodeon, saying about how much I loved the show as a kid, and how much I would, fight to wanting to see the Jungle movie come out. And then about 2 months later, I received a letter, well, not a letter, I received a drawing from Craig Bartlett saying thank you, and it was a drawing of Arnold and Gerald and Helga.
And ironically, years later, you would actually get to interview the guy.
Yeah, the sad thing about it is that I lost my original drawing because I've moved so many times over the years. But yes, a few years later, I would get to interview him. And I'm hoping...
Did he remember you?
Yes, he actually did remember me.
Wow.
Yeah, when I brought up that story about, I don't know if you remember me, Craig, but... let's see, I interviewed him back in 2012 or 2013, so I don't know if you remember me, but I think about 10 years ago, I wrote you a letter saying about how much I wanted the movie to come out, and he remembered me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. I'm hoping to get a hold of Craig again, because Hey Arnold's going to be celebrating its 20th anniversary in October. I think that this movie would have done amazing if this would have came out. I don't care what Nickelodeon had to say. This movie deserved to have come out. I don't care about the Wild Thornberrys movie, and I certainly do not care about Rugrats Go Wild. But the Hey Arnold Jungle movie definitely deserved to have needed to come out.
Or Rugrats Wild Arnold coming to a theatre near you.
I don't know if that would have worked.
That would have been awful.
That would have been awful, yeah. But anyway, there's one thing that I had in my mind that kind of interested me. Next to Samurai Jack, teasing about an upcoming movie that, was eventually just scrapped because Gendy wanted to focus on doing other projects. Hey Arnold's The Jungle Movie was one of the first things that I saw people going online on forums, gathering up a whole bunch of people saying that we want to try to see if we can get this movie back. And it generated a whole bunch of fan letters going into Nickelodeon saying we want to see this movie come back. And then eventually we would have a whole bunch of fan communities build up to it, Hey Arnold Saved the Jungle Movie. And eventually, shocking as it is, around last year, Nickelodeon announced they're going to do the Hey Arnold TV movie based off of Hey Arnold the Jungle Movie because fan outcry happened. So, you know what? If this movie would have came out, I don't know if 90s nostalgia would be as prevalent as it is now because, Hey Arnold the Jungle Movie was one of the biggest things that everybody wanted to see. And, because if the Hey Arnold Jungle Movie would have came out in theaters, that would have been the end of Hey Arnold, and that's it. I mean, it would have still generated a massive audience, sure, looking back with nostalgia guys, and the fact that the show is still really, really good today, but I don't think it would have generated as much of a gigantic fan base as it does now, because before the movie came out, people were still talking about Hey Arnold, with the 90s or all that, and doing that hashtag Save the Jungle Movie. A whole bunch of interviews with the cast members and Craig Bartlett talking about, is there any news about, the Jungle Movie? What's going on with the Jungle Movie? Do you think the Jungle Movie will ever happen? Tell us more about the Jungle Movie and what the story would have been like. It's the Jungle Movie was just that one thing that we wanted to have and we could never get because Nickelodeon was in the way. So we fought to get it, and then at the end we got it.
I think in many ways what happened to Hey Arnold was a similar situation to Family Guy and Futurama, a decade ago, where, those shows were pretty much mistreated in their earlier run, and then when they came to Adult Swim, they gained a whole new audience and gained enough profits enough for the show to come back. And I think that's what's happening with Hey Arnold and Rugrats right now.
Yeah, exactly. When Hey Arnold and Rugrats re-aired on the 90s or all that, they gained a brand new audience once again. And then they heard about the Jungle Movie, and then they wanted to have the Jungle Movie being released. And then they probably joined in with the Hey Arnold community saying that they want to save the Jungle Movie because they want to see this movie conclude. And you know what? Thanks to fan outcry, we were able to get what we want.
To some extent, I think this has also happened with Rugrats to a lesser extent because of nostalgia. I feel like people have pretty much revisited the series and they want to crave more, but not as much as Hey Arnold.
Well, here's the thing. Hey Arnold had an ending that never came out. So Rugrats already had its run. Hey Arnold had that last piece of the puzzle that was incomplete because Nickelodeon didn't want to release it. They didn't feel that because Hey Arnold the movie didn't gain as much money, they didn't want it to be released because they felt it would have been too risky to produce. So it's you know what? I mean, this was a thing that we wanted to see because Nickelodeon held back on releasing this movie that we wanted for a very long time. And you know what? I mean, you know, it kind of backfired on Nickelodeon because they didn't think that anybody was going to remember Hey Arnold because it was a show that came out in the 90s. But it's like, no, because Hey Arnold was able to not release this movie was what made many people remember it. It's like with Invader Zim. When Nickelodeon canceled Invader Zim, it just ended up with people remembering it more fondly than most of the Nicktoons that came out in the 2000s.
Exactly. And to be honest with you, I think that in a way, unintentionally, this probably actually did good for Hey Arnold. I'm not saying that Nickelodeon should have cancelled the movie because they definitely shouldn't have, but I do think that in a way, Nickelodeon themselves brought upon Hey Arnold's revived popularity.
Exactly. Because they didn't release the Jungle movie, it just made people want to see the conclusion of Hey Arnold because Nickelodeon wasn't going to do it. They didn't want to release it. So it just created a huge community of fans who wanted to see this movie come out. And you know what? In recent years, it's gotten to a point in which as long as you're able to keep a professional attitude and you're able to gather up a huge fan base that wants to have this happen, anything can be possible. Like Samurai Jack. A lot of people wanted to see the Samurai Jack movie because, you know, it was supposed to have this huge fight with Aku, and it was supposed to lead up towards, you know, if Jack was able to go back to the past, right, and stop Aku before the whole future thing happened. And guess what? We're getting the animated series on Adult Swim. And what about Full House? You know, people loved watching Full House on Netflix. We got the sequel. People started watching Boys Meets World on reruns on Disney. We got Girl Meets World. People started seeing the Gilmore Girls on, you know, Netflix. Boom, we got the Gilmore Girls revival.
People started watching, rewatching Rugrats on the 90s or on that, and the Splash. There's a possibility of that coming back. People watched Powerpuff Girls on Boomerang, and we've got a revival.
Exactly. So it used to be in case in which like 20 or 30 years ago, if a show's finished, that's it. You're done. Even if it was a short run show, and if it didn't generate as much views, that's it. There was no profit into these shows because it didn't generate as much shows as the other show. And they were just left in the wayside, and then they focused on the next thing. But then as time went on, people started to gain, like, then the shows started getting like a cult following, and then the cult following just grew more and more and more over the years. And they just started gaining like a massive following. And, you know, that's what happened. And this is the only time in this podcast in which we're going to be in which we discussed about a movie that is actually going to come out. It actually ends on a happy note. So, you know what? It couldn't have gone to a better movie.
I agree, and to be honest with you, I am really excited over this. This is something that fans have been waiting over a decade for, and at one point, back in 2009, Craig Bartlett himself didn't even think this was going to happen. However, thanks to his dedicated fan base, and thanks to Nickelodeon, ironically, we're getting this movie made, and to be honest with you, I'm really, really looking forward to it. Other than Harvey Beaks, pretty much more than Harvey Beaks, it's pretty much the most positive thing to come out of Nickelodeon for such a long time.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And, you know, who knows where this will lead up to?
Chris Viscardi.
Thank you, Chris Viscardi. You wonderful man, you.
I already have respect for Chris Viscardi thanks to his brilliant shows, and he seemed like a nice person in interviews. However, I really have to thank him for making this happen. I think he knows quality.
Yeah, I do too. Anyway, before we go, there's one thing that I was a little bit disappointed of. You see, at Nick Upfront 2016, when we were discussing about the details of all the upcoming projects, there was no mention of Skyrat.
I think Skyrat, I wonder what's happened to Skyrat, because basically that was actually going to be the show that pretty much was going to be a test to see how well it would do, and then if it was successful, they were going to bring back Hey Arnold. However, it just seems like it's probably been scrapped in favour of Hey Arnold.
Yeah. Which, you know what? It hasn't been 100% confirmed, but I do not want to talk about Skyrat in a future episode of Nicksmissal, but we'll just see what the future holds.
Yeah, I really hope it does get made eventually.
Yeah, me too. I'm really excited about this movie. It would have been nice if it would have came out when it did, when it did back in like 2002 or 2003, but you know what? I'm not complaining that it's finally coming out now. Which, you know what, I mean, if I was to complain about, it should have came out a long time ago, that would be really greedy and selfish of me. So, I'm just happy that it is coming out.
I'm more than happy that it's coming out. I am actually really sensing a great future for Nickelodeon if this keeps up. Not to say that they won't ever make mistakes again, but it is a step in the right direction. And it's nice to see that they're finally giving the fans what they've been asking for.
Yeah. All right, well, that is it for this episode. Tune in next time as we talk about, unfortunately, another Nicktoon that would have came out theatrically, but it was unfortunately pushed to the sidelines to make favor for the Rugrats movies because of its popularity, and then eventually the movie got canceled. So we'll see you next time.
Next season.
So why does no one